Hi everyone and welcome to this security webinar. My name is Paul Costa. I'm here with Ivo Gonçalves and we are part of the Platform Ops team that will present this session. Let me start by telling you about Jeff Forrestal. Back in 1998, almost 20 years ago, when Windows NT 4.0 was still the next great thing and when websites mostly used Access databases, Jeff was making some research for an Hacker Online magazine called Frack, and he was doing this for an anti-vulnerability. He was, and I'm quoting him now, just looking around, searching for something different, until he stumbled upon something really out of the ordinary. He was able to piggyback some SQL commands and get back data not supposed to be accessible. He and his fellow eventually decided to report his finding to the database vendor, and the answer they got was, by today's standards, appalling. It's not a problem, so don't worry about doing anything to stop it. That's the answer. This vulnerability was not a problem. The flag raised by Jeff and his pal at such a low risk for the vendor that they felt it was not worth the effort to inform users about this kind of attacks. I mean, who was storing personal info on a database being accessed via web in 1998? AltaVista was the search engine back then. What would be the use of that information in the wrong hands? This was a completely different era. 18 years later, 2016, here we are. Can you guess what is the top risk, the most critical vulnerability on the modern web? You guessed it. Since 2010, OWASP classifies injection as the #1 web application security flaw. This is to say that you need to take care of every raised flag, big, small, simple, hard, doesn't matter. Always take care of the flag. In 2016, the awareness of the general public to the jargon of cybersecurity, privacy, data protection, it's there, and it's there big time. It's not an extra layer of work to have a small impact anymore. It needs to be part of your core development process. It needs to be part of your infrastructure core design. Hence, cover your bases, and we mean it always. And because we really mean it, we decided to deliver this webinar in a slightly different format than the usual one. Ivo, here with me, will guide you through some quick explanations about common vulnerabilities, show you practical, live examples of applications being compromised using exploits on those vulnerabilities, and how you can avoid all of this by using OutSystems built-in features. I am going to play an IT manager who just got a security assessment on the applications that the dev team is building, and I want to address the issues before moving the apps live into production. We know there are some of you in the audience that kind of relate to this, right? So, Ivo.
Okay, hello all. So, first things first, and this is our agenda for today. We'll firstly have a brief discussion about what is IT security, and this is a vast subject. There's a lot to explore, but we'll be brief on this one. Then we'll address a practice called layer security, and we'll show you how OutSystems fits into this practice. And then the next part of our agenda will be the main focus of the webinar. We'll show you what we call the 7 common vulnerabilities. And the 7 common vulnerabilities are nothing else but a compilation that we got from the field. This is based on our personal experience. And we identify these 7 vulnerabilities as being the most common and having the highest chance to come up in future security assessments. So we'll walk you through these 7 vulnerabilities, show you how it could be exploited and how do you fix that with OutSystems. So what means IT security? If you search the web, you'll find a lot of definitions for this term, okay? But the one I like the most is from SANS Institute that says that security is the process of implementing measures and systems designed to securely protect and safeguard information against any unauthorized access, misuse, malfunction, modification, destruction, or improper disclosure. And I like to hear the word process because security is not about tools or security suites. This kind of products may help you and may provide you some protection. However, security is an iterative process and it should be part of your business, the way you deliver your business, because if you look for security as a burden, it will fail. And with that in mind, I would also like to introduce you a fundamental concept, which is called the CIA triad. And CIA has nothing to do with the US agency, intelligence agency, okay? Instead, CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And this triad is a fundamental concept because most of the security measures are designed and implemented to secure one or more facets of this triad. And what does each one of these words mean? So confidentiality is preventing unauthorized parties to access the information. Integrity is preventing data manipulation and deletion by unauthorized parties, while availability is having the information always available to authorized parties. Okay, and for layered security, what does it mean? So layered security is a practice of combining multiple security measures, and by doing that, you are protecting yourself against several sources, different sources, and different types of threats. And for this practice, you can have as many layers as you want. However, for OutSystems ecosystem, we identified 3 layers as being fundamental. The first one is the application layer, and this regards to all development practice that you deploy with your application. Then you have the application servers layer, and it regards to security configurations that you deploy in the application servers supporting your OutSystems applications. It could be IaaS, JBoss, WebLogic. And last but not least, systems and network, which are security configurations deployed in the surrounding infrastructure that support your OutSystems environment. Next, in the next part of our agenda, where we'll show you how to fix, how to address the 7 common vulnerabilities, we provide you solutions that will fit in the first 2 layers. We leave the last one out of the loop. And now, the main focus of this agenda will be security and OutSystems. So for us, security is a major concern. And with that in mind, we evaluate the OutSystems generated code with third-party auditing tools. So the generated source code is subject of advanced vulnerability scanning. By doing that, we are making sure OutSystems applications are mostly secure. And I say mostly because as in any other development tool, you have, as a developer, you have the flexibility to develop unsecure patterns. So exploits on user code can still be present. And the bottom layers, application servers and systems and network, may also have vulnerable components, and those components may jeopardize the overall security of your OutSystems environment. And there are no system 100% secure. So any system has the potential to be breached. And now, Paulo.
Yeah. So now I'm going to play an IT manager, and let's start by saying, okay, if I am the IT manager of a company developing an application in OutSystems. We had such a short notice to develop this application that we are doing this extremely quickly, and I'm kind of afraid that we are overlooking some things. So I decided to hire an external company to make a security assessment, and they identified more than a couple of issues that they want to see addressed before we move the application into the functional tests and later on to the production, to the live environment. So I have here the bullet points that they want to see addressed, and I want you to help me understand and solve these issues using nothing but the OutSystems platform itself. So the first one they identified here is a thing called open communication channels. Basically, they said, okay, we have 3 things in the kind of the same basket that we want to see addressed. And the first one of that basket is the open communication channels. What exactly does this mean, and why is this a concern for me?
So, Paul, this is when you have a communication channel where the information is exchanged in plain text. So someone who can access the network may eavesdrop or tamper the information. And this is very common in wireless networks. And if you want, I can show you one example.
Absolutely.
Let's imagine that you are in a wireless network. I have here this prepared beforehand to speed up things. And you are in an open communication channel, which means we are in plain HTTP. So anyone who can access the network with a network sniffer can capture everything going on in the network. So if a guy using a plain communication channel performs a login, like this, the other guy will be able to actually see what's going on and capture your credentials, right?
Yeah.
So there we are. We have here the traffic that we capture with network sniffer, and as you can see here, you can see everything that was changed between my computer and web server. And I will search. I know that the username is admin. If I search, I will find the input with the username, and the password is admin. So anyone who can perform this in a wireless network or in any other sort of open network can do this sort of things.
Yeah. So when they say open communication channel, they're not kidding. It's clearly open.
Yes, exactly.
And so how can I prevent this from happening?
Wrong combination. Okay. Sorry about that. We have some lag here because I'm thinking my second desktop is already in place.
So how?
Okay.
Yeah.
So fixing this, the answer may sound obvious. I believe everyone heard about this. The solution is to use HTTPS. And this sounds obvious, right? But we keep finding a lot of web applications, some of them even exposed to the world, not using HTTPS or doing that in the wrong way. So how can you do this with the OutSystems platform? So first of all, if you remember the layered security approach, we'll start by the application server layer. The first thing to do is to acquire digital certificate and configure your web server to support HTTPS. This is done by sysops or DevOps because this must be done in the application server itself. Still, in the application server, you should disable SSL 2.0 and 3.0. These versions of the protocol are no longer secure. And you must prevent these attacks. If you need to support TLS version 1.0, you must disable CDC cipher modes. Otherwise, you can disable this version of the protocol at all. And as a note, with OutSystems 10 and native mobile apps, you are required to have valid and trusted certificates. So take the chance you are pushing to OutSystems 10 and set up HTTPS in your infrastructure. So, but there are more you can do. Still in the application server layer, you should enforce HSTS headers. What are these headers? Basically, HSTS stands for HTTP Street Transport Security. And this is a policy that prevents and protects yourself against protocol downgrade attacks. Basically, if you try to access a web server who has the setup for HSTS headers in plain text, in the response, your browser will be redirected to HTTPS. So you have the option to try to connect through plain text, but the web server will instruct you to use secure channels instead.
You mean like most of the social networks you use today?
Yes,
you
exactly.
type on the browser and it shows up as HTTPS.
Yeah. Exactly. And you have an option in Service Center or Lifetime, if your environment is managed by Lifetime, to set up these headers in the application server. So you just have to go there to Service Center or Lifetime and enable this option. By doing this, next time you try to access your web server in plain text, you'll be forced to use HTTPS instead. Okay, still in the application server, there are more you can do. You can enable HTTPS for all screens and integrations. And as a note, if you have HSTS in place, that configuration will overwrite this one. However, if you remember the concept of layered security, combining multiple security measures, you are making sure that if by any chance someone disables HSTS headers, you are still forcing your applications to use HTTPS. And as in the previous slide, you have an option in Service Center or Lifetime to enable HTTPS for all screens and integrations. You just need to go there and set this option on. And in the application layer, you can also perform the same sort of protection. You can enable, and you should enable, HTTPS for all screens and integrations, and everything I said before is valid for this one. The thing is, if you push your application to a brand new infrastructure who doesn't have HTTPS in place, by having this setup in the application itself, you are forcing that infrastructure to implement proper HTTPS. So you are forcing the infrastructure, you are forcing your IT guy to harden your infrastructure, your OutSystems infrastructure. And that's all regarding this. You have anything else?
Oh no, this sounded good. But they also mentioned something like session cookies without secure flag. What is this secure flag, and why is this on the same kind of mini basket of the first item?
Well, secure flag, session cookies without secure flag basically means that your session cookies are transmitted in those open communication channels. And it allows anyone who can capture the content of that cookie to perform an attack called session hijack. For instance, the content is known by the attacker, and it can capture your session ID and hijack your session. Once again, I can show you how this works in real world.
Absolutely.
So I'll start once again by capturing everything going on in the network, and I will clean my cookies just to make sure that we don't have anything cached. So let's delete all the cookies. So let's reload the page, and I'm going to perform a login. So I'm logged in as admin, right? And it was an open communication channel. So I should be able to see the session cookie that was changed between my computer and the web server. So here we are. Once again, we have a capture, and session cookie will be here. Where it is? Sorry, let me check.
So even
there he is.
So
this is the session cookie for the admin user. Okay, and now I know the session ID of that user. So if I log in the other browser, I got a different session cookie. But since I know the session cookie for the admin user,
you can hijack my session.
I can simply set the session ID to be the same as the admin user, and by doing that, I can simply log in as. Sorry, I didn't copy. It's this one, right? So let me just reload the cookies. Sorry,
I think you gave an enter in the end.
Was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the session is right here, session cookie. So you are getting it, right? Now we have a new session cookie. So now I have the session cookie of the admin user, and by doing this, by having and it is really simple to exploit. This is a really simple technique to exploit, and now I'm authenticated as admin, and I can do whatever I want. So
we need to secure the cookie.
Sorry about that. I believe you are not seeing the presentation, right?
Yeah, here we are.
No, I lost the slide there. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So how can you protect yourself against this sort of exploitation? You may ask, well, if I have HTTPS in place, this won't fix the issue for me. If you are you have HSTS headers will force you to HTTPS. The answer is no, because you can always click on a plain HTTP URL. So the first time, if you have a session with that server,
the first time I send to the web server, I'm sending it on plain text. So
you are sending the cookie. So it won't fix the issue for you. You are still vulnerable to this sort of exploitation. So what you can do to protect yourself against this sort of attack? So if you search in the OutSystems port, you have a component named factory configuration, and the latest version has an option that will set the secure flagging session cookies for you. So by doing that, if you try to access the web server in plain text, session cookies won't be transmitted in that channel, just in secure channels. So it's simple as installing this component and setting these.
Marking a checkbox and vulnerability is gone. This is pretty good.
Okay.
And since that one is taken care of, what about this one, session fixation? I have no idea what this is. Can you explain it to me?
Well, session fixation is when the session ID doesn't change whenever you perform a login. So you have a session ID, but you are not authenticated yet. You performed login and your session ID still remains the same.
Okay.
And this allows room to the same sort of attacks, which is the session hijack. And usually this requires exploiting other vulnerabilities to fixate the session ID for the user to a value that you know. But let's imagine a public computer, okay? I'm within a public computer, and I want to fixate the session to a value that I know. The only thing I have to do is to get a session cookie, and the session cookie will expire at the end of the session. So while the session between the public computer and the web server is valid, the session is still valid. Afterwards, it will expire. However, with an editor like this, you can force the expiration date to be instead at the end of the session to be a date in the future. And whenever you do that,
the session ID will always keep the same.
Session ID will always have the same value as it had before. So by doing this, let me just log out in this browser and clean the cookies to make sure that we don't have the same user in both sessions. And in Firefox, I was able to fixate the session ID to a value that I know, right? If I log in as Patricia Wesley, okay, as the attacker, I know that your session ID will be the one I fixate. So the only thing I have to do is to impersonate your user by using the same session ID, and I will be able to steal any
login. So basically, you'll be able to steal any login from that computer because the session ID is the same until the date of expiration that you changed.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if let me just set the session cookie to be the same value. Okay, now I do this. I believe I did the same mistake once again.
With the enter.
Let me just refresh this one once again. And if I set the cookie to be the same as Patricia Wesley, I will be Patricia Wesley. If Patricia Wesley
decides to log out,
and Eddie access the same computer and he performs a login, next time I refresh my browser, I'll be Eddie. So
this highlights the issues with public computers and web applications that are not well secured on this particular vulnerability, because once a guy gets access to that public computer is able to change the date, he can steal the sessions and basically log in with every user that he wants from there.
Yeah,
he could be sitting next to the person being attacked, just waiting for someone to access that computer.
Exactly.
Wow.
So
how can I solve this? Because I need to solve this one.
So to fix this, you are required to perform to fix your login logic in the application layer. So you must implement a token-based authentication and for Fixation ID Redirection. And this is an example of it would like. First thing to do is validate login, and if the credentials are valid, then you proceed to generate a token, and that token is saved into the database, and you have a role mapping the token to a user and a flag stating if it's valid or not. Then you proceed to expire the session cookie. So by doing this,
you're overriding the client, the definition from the client.
Yes, and next you validate the token if the token is valid, and if it is, you perform the login. That will set a new session ID with a brand new cookie, and you expire the token. And no one, even if someone captures the token, it will be expired and you won't be able to use it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it seems easy. Looking at the screenshots, looks quite easy to implement.
Yes, indeed.
So okay, let's move on into the what they told me was the most known issue nowadays, the most widespread issue that is at least is getting more public attention. It's the injections problem. Can you show me something about this, how this actually works, and how can you prevent this on our application?
Yes, basically this means your application is handling untrusted data poorly, and it could allow that malicious code is relayed to other systems and perform attacks such as SQL injection, or then the malicious code is interpreted or executed by the application, such as cross-site scripting, HTML injection. The good thing is when you have such patterns, such unsecure patterns, true change will warn you about that. So if you look for the true change warnings, you have message pointing to where you have such unsecure patterns.
Oh, great. So I just double click on the message and it will take me to the place where I need to make the correction.
Exactly. And this could be simple as injecting an HTML in a web screen like this one. As you can see, there's a link here, show notes, but this is nothing but a comment introduced by myself.
Oh, it should be plain text, but it's...
This is allowing the application to inject HTML.
Okay.
And this link is redirecting to OutSystems website.
Which is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, but it could be redirecting you towards a malicious website.
Yes.
So I believe you want to know how do you fix this, right?
Yeah.
So rule of thumb, escape content. From my experience, most of the cases you don't need to use an escape expression. So the platform already prevents injection at certain levels, but with default configurations. And by default, expressions are escaped. So you should escape content always. Sometimes you can't do it because your application requires an advanced pattern.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you should encode /sanitize the content. And as a note, for mobile apps, inputted content is always escaped. So this is valid for the web part. For the mobile part, you don't have to worry about that. And you have built-in functions for encoding the content.
That's great.
And you have an API, sanitization API, that you could reference in the references. It's available in the reference in every OutSystems environment. And you could reference that sanitization API and start using it in your application.
Basically, whenever I need to encode my code because it's not escaped and I have a plain text input there, I just need to encode that bit of text that I'm going to put on the input field, and it solved it. Basically encodes the thing and doesn't allow interpretation into creating links or something like that. Okay.
So next one, Paul.
Yeah, this one is the Open Redirect, and they showed me something, but I'm really not sure how this works. Can you show me an example of how this works and how can I prevent it?
This is also known as unvalidated redirections forwards, and is when your application allows redirect requests to untrusted URLs. And this is typically associated with phishing attacks. I have an example here of what would like a phishing attack. Someone pretending to be a guy that Naive John knows sends him a link asking help on solving a specific ticket, in this case is application. And cases application login flow as an input parameter named original URL to where the user is redirected after he performs the login. And this link basically is redirecting to a malicious website. And this is what it looks like in the code. And once again, the good news is true change warns you when you are vulnerable to open redirects. And
even gives you what you need to do, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I've also here an example of what would be a use case to exploit this vulnerability. This is a login page. Let me just log out. And this web page is vulnerable to open redirect. So I could send this address through that email, like the one was sent to Naive John, and I could simply redirect to a website that I want. And in this case, I'm going to redirect to OutSystems website, but it could be to anywhere else.
So what you're telling me is
I typed OutSystems.
So what you're telling me is that if this vulnerability, what it does, it's allowing a redirection to a site that could be exactly the same as the one expected by the user, simply it's not on the same domain. So you could, for instance, ask, there was an issue with your credentials, please type again your credentials, and you're typing the credentials thinking that you are on the site that you are supposed to be, but you're actually sending your credentials to someone else doing the attack. This is the phishing attack by default, right?
So fixing this,
let me guess, there's a built-in function.
Exactly. But first of all, don't use dynamic URLs for this sort of action, okay? In some cases, you have to do it. And if that's the case, use this function. This is how it looks like in an application not vulnerable to open redirect. Now, I hope I will type OutSystems. Luckily, it's in the history. And this is how it looks like when you have this in place. As you can see, that URL that was sent to the login flow, the domain was replaced by the domain of the current request.
So my website.
Yeah, if you have a path, let's imagine /cases in that application, you will still be in the same domain.
Yeah.
Okay, but there are more. Sometimes you really need to redirect users to.
Yeah, because I might be owner of a couple of domains where I need to put the application crossing information, and I need to really redirect my URL. So what can I do with that?
Yeah, if that's the case, you should develop a whitelisting mechanism. So whenever you have a dynamic URL, the first thing to do is to validate if it's whitelisted. If it's not, you block the redirect. Otherwise, you allow it to go forward. So this is how it will look like an application with this in place. The first one is is using the built-in function. The second one is whitelisting action in place. And that's it, Paul, for this one.
So the last couple of issues they bullet pointed it is first one is this one: sensitive user forms with autocomplete. Okay, the title is quite self-explanatory, but can you show me an example quickly of how this works and how can I prevent this using just the platform?
Yes, you said it all. Basically, is when the information is leaked in user forms, so it allows retrieving previously used data. An example would be a form for credit card number, for emails, and when you type a letter, the browser will give you hints about what was used before, in case you want to use the same value. And as you can see, if I type
the first letter,
yeah, I get suggestions for this field.
Yeah, and I don't want this if this has my social security number or any sensitive information. I don't want
card number, for instance.
Yeah.
Well, this is easily fixed in the application layer, and you can disable this option, the autocomplete, for sensitive user forms. And you just have to add an extended property for that form named autocomplete with a value of. And then if you type, you won't get suggestions for that field.
That's what I want.
Just a note here, most of the major browsers and password managers ignore the setting for username fields and password fields because they want you to decide whether you save or not your credentials. But for the remaining fields,
for
this is interpreted.
My email, my social security number, my credit card number, everything that is sensitive. Yeah. So it's just a matter of placing autocomplete off, and that's it.
Yes, simple.
Fantastic. Well, this one was simple. So the last one. The last one is user enumeration. They explained me, and I think the title is not as self-explanatory as the previous one, but maybe you can show me an example of.
Yes. This is when your application reveals if the username exists or not. And by knowing the username, you can perform a brute force attack. You can try many password combinations for that user. Good thing is OutSystems 10 has built-in protections against brute force attacks. But your application may be integrating with external systems, sharing the same credentials, and those external systems may have not protection against brute force attack. So you shouldn't reveal in your application if the user exists or not. The most common scenario is through feedback message like this, invalid username when you introduce a username that doesn't exist, or invalid password in case the username exists. And this type of generic feedback message provide information about if the user exists or not. So fixing this is quite simple. It's basically displaying generic message, and you just have to update the code in the application layer where these generic specific message are being generated. So an example for the previous message will be invalid username or password. By doing this,
I have no idea if the username is correct or not.
Could be one of both. And I believe that's all regarding the 7 vulnerabilities. And we would like to show you a matrix where you can map the references in this webinar with the OWASP Top 10 matrix. For those who don't know, OWASP Top 10 is a list of the most critical vulnerabilities in web applications. And on the left, you have a reference for that list, and on the right, you have a reference for the 7 vulnerabilities addressed in this webinar. And you can map this with OWASP Top 10.
Okay, and thank you for this, and this concludes our presentation.